glad that you could join us today. We are going to be baking up a sweet treat for you that you are really gonna love. So today in the Project Reboot kitchen, we are making chewy chocolate chip cookies, and believe me, they are delicious. All right, so let's go through the ingredients together, starting with the dry ingredients first. We are going to be using a confectioner sugar substitute, which is called Swerve. You're also going to need some coconut flour, some chocolate chips, and today we're using Lily's chocolate chips, which are made with erythritol and stevia. You'll also need baking soda, and our secret ingredient for today, which is powdered beef gelatin. That takes care of the dry ingredients. So for the wet ingredients, you'll need 2 large eggs, some grass-fed butter if you can. If not, regular butter is fine. And that is actually it for the wet ingredients. For today's recipe, we are using a confectioner's sugar substitute. This is Swerve. Swerve is made with erythritol and a proprietary blend, but it's essentially 0 sugars, and it's very sweet. And the thing that's great about Swerve is that, especially when you bake with erythritol, we found that the powdered form of it actually incorporates much better and it doesn't taste as grainy. You're welcome to use granulated erythritol if you prefer, but in this recipe, we're gonna use Swerve in the powdered form. For the secret ingredient, we are using a beef gelatin powder. This is actually going to give a really great texture to the cookies and make them really chewy and delicious. This is something you can get on Amazon. It's really great because it has a lot of collagen in it as well, which is great for hair, skin, and nails, so that's an added bonus. And it's pretty inexpensive, so we'll make sure to link all of the ingredients in the description below, as well as the recipe, so you can make sure to pick this up online if you can't find it in your local grocery store. Okay, so let's talk about coconut flour for a moment. When you go keto, typically the flours that are going to replace the traditional flour that you would use, like an all-purpose flour, would typically be almond flour or coconut flour. Now for this recipe, we're actually not going to be using almond flour at all. It's 100% made with coconut flour. The important thing to know about coconut flour is that it can go rancid really easily, so you wanna make sure that you're keeping it in an airtight container like this one. In addition, if it's easier for you, you can always keep it in the freezer if you're concerned that it might go rancid. If you're not really sure how to tell, you can just smell it, and if it smells sweet, it means it's okay. If it smells bitter, it means it's probably gone bad. Usually these types of flours, the nut flours and the coconut flour, will last about 6 months if you keep it in an airtight container like this. The other thing to note about coconut flour is that it's really absorbent, and so it is not a one-to-one substitute for traditional flours or even almond flour. So you want to keep that in mind. It may not seem like we're using a lot of flour in this recipe, but believe me, it is really going to absorb the liquid really well, and it's going to give us a great consistency to the dough. All right, so let's get baking. The first thing that you want to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you're going to need a large bowl, a whisk or a fork if you prefer, a spatula. You're going to need a cookie scoop. We're using a small cookie scoop in this case, but if you want larger cookies, you can use a larger cookie scoop. You just need to adjust the baking time to account for the larger amount of dough. So in your large bowl, the first ingredient we're gonna start with is the eggs, and you're gonna wanna whisk those a little bit until they get nice and frothy. And then you're going to add your erythritol, your vanilla, and your butter. And you're gonna make sure that you get those nice and combined. Next, we're gonna add the coconut flour, gelatin, and baking soda. Now we actually use salted butter today because that's all we had in the house. Typically you're gonna wanna use unsalted butter. If you do use unsalted butter, you're gonna wanna add a little bit of salt back into the mixture to make sure that you can bring out those flavors. Now since we're using a salted butter today, I'm going to leave that sea salt out of this recipe, and we're actually gonna finish these with a little bit of salt at the end. All right, so now that we have all the ingredients in the bowl, we are going to make sure that we take our spatula and we are going to combine all of those ingredients until we get a nice dough forming. Because no chocolate chip cookie would be complete without chocolate chips, we're going to be adding our chocolate chips as the final step in our recipe. Once you get everything incorporated and you have a nice dough that forms, you're gonna take your cookie scoop, and onto a baking tray, you are going to scoop out 1-inch balls. Now these cookies aren't going to spread very much, so you don't have to worry about giving them so much space in order for them to expand, but we do need to make sure that they're not sitting right on top of each other. Next step is that we're actually going to flatten out the cookies just a bit to give them a little help because, as I mentioned, these don't spread very much in the oven. All right, now that we have all of our cookies on our baking tray, we're gonna pop these guys in the oven and we're gonna bake them for between 8 to 10 minutes. All right, y'all, so the cookies are out of the oven and they look amazing. I really wish that y'all could smell these because they smell incredible. So I'm really excited to dig into these, but we do need to let them cool just a little bit so that they can firm up. So in the meantime, we added some sea salt to the tops of the cookies while they're cooling, which is really gonna add a bit of a special flavor to the cookies and kind of perk them up a little bit. All right, so for the cookie salt, you wanna look for a coarse salt. I've lovingly dubbed it cookie salt because I use this coarse salt exclusively for cookies. But this salt is great because it's really going to complement the flavor, the richness, the butteriness, and the coconut flour that we have in these cookies, and it's really gonna liven it up and make it really delicious. All right, y'all, so the moment of truth has finally arrived. Our cookies have completely cooled, and I'm gonna break one open so you can kind of see what the inside looks like. You can see that they're not quite cake-like, but they're definitely substantial, and they're full of chocolate chips. So let's give it a taste and see what we think. Oh my goodness. Those chocolate chips almost melt in your mouth, and the texture of the coconut flour, you can't taste coconut in it at all. It's just got a really good texture. They are definitely chewy because we put that gelatin in there, and they're really satisfying. Why are you not already making these right now? They're delicious.
Cookie, I want the cookie. My mouth is watering right now.
You like it? You think you're gonna eat that whole thing?
Yeah.
Let me have a bite.
Chocolately, it has a lot of chocolate. The batter is good. It tastes salty. Crazy!